Hello, welcome again. It's good to know that you're there. I actually appreciate your love in staying tuned and also your compliments. They keep us going. Thank you again. Now, we continue in our series of considering of minerals. Minerals good for the well-being of both human and normal and lower animals. So we've looked at the macronutrients or macro minerals or elements you want to call them, and this time we started with the micronutrients, the micro elements or trace minerals. I said previously that they are called trace elements not because they are not important, but even because on the flip side that they are required in a very small amount to have significant impact. And that means that they are very crucial. The previous we just considered zinc. Now you want to go to the previous video, look at zinc, particularly the functions of zinc. Very, very numerous, required in very minute amount, and yet the functions are so much. Virtually every part of the animal physiology, human physiology requires this. That even over 300 enzymes in the body requires zinc as a cofactor. But today we'll start a new one with copper. Copper, the Latin name is called cuprum. The atomic weight is 65. Now, as we go on, I beg your pardon. So, history of copper. Copper, the sources, the absorption, metabolism, functions of copper, and deficiency symptoms. These are all what to expect as we go on. Now, a brief history. In this particular video, we're looking at both the history and the sources. So the subsequent videos, we'll be looking at absorption and then metabolism and then functions and then deficiency symptoms. Now let's dive in straight. Now, the ancient Egyptians were known to use copper as a means of healing wounds. And that means that when we talk about it ancient, we're talking about for thousands of years, copper has been known to be very useful both for human and for animals. So discover that compounds that contain copper were used for in healing of wounds. Now we'll get to know when we get to function more. But then by the 19th century, that is 18 this, it was already discovered that animals that were deprived of copper. Now this is the chemical symbol for it, were actually poor in growing. Their growth were seriously hampered, and also they developed anemia. Anemia, which is also spelled anemia. Anemia. A shortage of blood in the system. Shortage of blood in the system, and also pigmentation. Pigmentation has to do with development of color in the skin or color in anything. Pigmentation has to do with color. So when there's shortage of copper, there's usually poor growth affecting blood and also affecting pigmentation. Now if you look at pigmentation, you won't talk about it. For example, human being, melanin, that is responsible for that, for the color. And if you talk about that, it also affects the color in sheep, goats, cattle, and also in birds. So affects. Now, other thing in the history of it is that by the mid-90s, now this is beyond 18 days, so by the 90s, by the middle of the 90s, particularly 1927, 1930, 1927, the University of Wisconsin in the United States discovered something profound about the importance of the usefulness of copper by 1927. And then by 1930, and they discovered that certain diseases were actually like the one that animal would just fall and then die. That fall and die kind of ailments. They were looking all right, but suddenly the sheep would just fall and die. By the 90s, 1930s, 1933, from 1927, they discovered that copper was established as a vital micronutrient necessary for the health of animals, enzymatic functions, and blood formation, blood formation, linking it to what? Anemia. Now, having known that blood function, good growth, and enzymatic function requires or depends also on copper, apart from other minerals, particularly also you're talking about iron and also zinc. What are the sources where you can get this? So that leads us to the next major dietary sources of copper. Now, animal sources and plant bases, and then other sources that are non-animal and non-plant bases. So look at the first category, the animal sources, second category, the plant sources, and then other sources. In the animal sources, you have organs, particularly the liver. Now, why do you say that? The liver is very wonderful an organ. The functions are quite much. And the liver stores several nutrients. One of the nutrients, minerals like copper. Most of the minerals are stored in the liver. So when an animal is killed and then you eat the liver, you are eating a lot of minerals. So you want to get certain minerals in your body, please eat liver. It's actually important. So the liver is one of them, or another internal organs like you have the kidney, the heart, very important too. And then you look at shellfish like oyster, crab, and lobster. Lobster is also a very important one. And then you look at fish and other seafood, and also egg. Although egg doesn't contain so much, but a moderate quantity of copper. Then we look at the plant sources, particularly green leafy vegetables, dark green leafy vegetables. Example, spinach and kale. You also now find in grains like whole grains like oats, rice, and the others. Then you also find the legumes like cowpea or the beans, soya beans, cowpea, and the others. You find a good quantity of copper. Now, you also find in nuts and seed like cashew nuts and some other seeds of plant, sunflower seed, you find a lot there. And also dried fruits like dates, for example, dates. And also you have in cocoa items, chocolate, cocoa, anything produced from cocoa. That is Theobroma cacao, you find a good quantity of it. Now, some of these things are used in animal feed. You can get cocoa feed meal, and from this you dry cocoa beans, crush them, and then incorporate to the feed, and then you give to animals. Now, other sources of copper, you have drinking water, particularly in places where in the plumbing you have area with copper plumbings, and you have the copper incorporated in the drinking water, especially municipal water. And then copper can also be fortified in food, for example bread and some canned food, to meet particular needs. Now, having seen this today, we looked at the historical part to copper as an essential mineral, a nutrient in the body. We looked at how it started from the ancients, how it was used to cure injuries, and also in pigmentation, color. We'll get to see that this pigmentation having to do with this color of the skin, color of the coats of animals and others. We've seen also the major sources being organs, plants, and plants, for example, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and other sources being incorporated. I believe you gain something, you gain value. Please share, like, give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for being around. If you have not been there, we will not do this. Thank you. Please let's meet in the next video. Please share if you like. Let's see. Thank you.